Welcome to another episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back once again talking college football. The countdown to kickoff is officially on for San Jose State versus Sacramento State live from San Jose inside CEFQ Stadium. As we've been attending fall camp, we've been talking about the team for months, and I know the guy joining me now has been keeping tabs on the Sacramento State football team for quite some time. So let's bring him on in. He's no stranger to covering Sac State football as he's been keeping an eye on this squad for the past 2 seasons. Jack Freeman, thanks for joining us. You've been doing some great things with the State Hornet, the student ran publication. Thanks for coming on the Sports Sentiment.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Nick. Very happy to be here and to talk some Sac State football. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's rock and roll. So I was just learning about your background, and you've been attending Sacramento State and doing all the good stuff with the State Hornet. But I understand you from what you were telling me, you got some San Jose ties as well. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, of course, man. So I lived in San Jose for since when I was two to when I was about 11. I went to John J. Montgomery Elementary School in Evergreen, right down the road from CEFQ Stadium. I've been to my fair share of San Jose State games, and it was kind of like when we were going to elementary school, we'd have those college days, and San Jose State stuff was everywhere. So I've always felt kind of a connection, even though I attended Sac State.
Yeah. And then, of course, even just the past, I would say half decade. And, even for Sacramento State, I felt like they've always had themselves a high class football program with the kind of wins that they've gotten over the past several seasons. I feel like San Jose State has been right around there. They've finally gotten some consistent winning within the program since 2020 when they won the Mountain West. And they got themselves a new cast of characters running this thing this year. They got a first-year head coach in Ken Niumatalolo, a brand new offensive coordinator in Craig Stutzman, and a quarterback, which is still very much in the air and probably no one will know until Thursday evening. But thanks for coming on. I wanted to get your thoughts on Sac State this season because this has been a football program, like I said, that has just been getting more and more eyeballs ever since you guys had an upset win over Stanford last year in Palo Alto, and even going back, you even won in Fort Collins against San Jose State's rivals in Colorado State. So talk about this Sac State program, like where they stand. They're one of the top FCS programs, and the way I see it, with so many unknowns with San Jose State this year and a new staff, and you guys do return a head coach in Andy Thompson this year, and you do have a quarterback coming back as well. This is the way I see it. This is a game that's filled with a bunch of unknowns, and I think it's very intriguing heading into this Thursday.
Yeah, definitely. This is definitely going to be a game, I feel like, where San Jose State's going to get tested out of the gate. This is not one of those body bag games that we see when FCS programs go to FBS schools. And like you said before, Sacramento State has given fits to their last two FBS opponents, beating Colorado State and Stanford. This is a team that is really, this is a program really that's only been known for winning since like 2019. So they're still trying to, sustain a winning culture. They've done that after Troy Taylor left for Stanford. That was kind of the story of that game when they upset them in Palo Alto. There was a lot of hurt feelings after he left. But they hired from within with Andy Thompson. He was their DC under Troy Taylor. So they've kind of wanted to maintain that culture. A lot of, like you said, a lot of returners. The thing that I think could scare Sac State fans the most is the defense. I was talking with our football beat writer Ryan earlier, and they really only have one projected starter returning from last year. So 10 new starters. And this is a defense who even struggled last year with a lot of seniors on the roster. That's the biggest unknown for Sac State right now. I think we know what the offense is going to look like. Caden Bennett, who is a senior from Nevada, he was at Boise State, transferred in. He's really good, and he'll lead this offense. It'll be explosive. We kind of know what we've got there, but this defense, man, we don't know what it's going to look like. I think a lot of Sac State fans are hoping it's better than last year. There's no guarantees about what anything looks like.
And you would hope it would improve because Andy Thompson is a defensive minded head coach, right? He spent 10 years at Northern Arizona, and then he finally got his head coaching gig at Sac State. So you mentioned you guys only got one returner on defense, but the good news is for you guys is that You guys had yourself a really good offense last year, and that's the expectation this year with Caden Bennett. He played in all 13 games, started in 10 of them last season. Is I'm pretty sure that he's the go-to guy heading into this game, no doubt about it.
Yeah, he'll be QB1. I wouldn't be shocked if redshirt freshman Carson Conklin got some playing time. It was kind of weird with Bennett last year because in that Stanford game, he had a shoulder injury and it kind of hampered him throughout that middle of the season. So they were really trying anything at quarterback. And Conklin, he played 4 games to keep his redshirt status. And we saw him kind of show out. He even got the start in their homecoming game. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see him if maybe Bennett's off to a slow start. But when he's healthy, Caden Bennett is electric at quarterback. He really reminds me of a prime Russell Wilson type guy who gets out of the pocket, breaks tackles. I know Bay Area fans, I'm a Seahawks fan. So I know Bay Area fans might not like that comparison, but he really is. He's electric. He can get out of the pocket and make his own plays. When his throw on the run ability is fantastic. And so it'll be good, I think, for Sac State fans to see a healthy Caden Bennett again. But I wouldn't be shocked if maybe if he can't get it going in the fourth quarter, if they're looking for a spark, maybe they turn to the freshman in Conklin.
Yeah, and Caden Bennett. Yeah, I think the Russell Wilson comp is a pretty good one because of the dual threat capabilities. And he had 100 rush yards in that upset win over Stanford last year. And man, when the game was getting tight in the fourth quarter, he was making some big time throws. And let's talk about some of that weaponry that Sac State's got this year, because you guys got Jared Gibson returning, second team All Big Sky. You guys got Devin Gandy, who, if I'm not mistaken, suffered an injury mid-season, and he was out for the back half of the FCS playoff run. And then you guys got 2 FBS transfers and Joshua Nicholson, who I saw last year at San Diego State, and Makai Cope. Talk about this wide receiver room for the Hornets this season, because I think it's going to be a good unit overall.
Yeah, I thought last year that they were pretty loaded at wide receiver. And it's the same case again this season. They are really, really impressive when it comes to that. Jared Gibson is fantastic. He's like a deep threat, go get it, throw it up guy. Devin Gandy's really shifty. Even their tight end room is really, really deep too. So that's definitely going to be a strength. I'm not sure really where the FBS transfers are going to slot in. I know Gibson, I know Gandy are really, really good. Even they got a transfer from Washington State last year, Anderson Grover, who really established himself in the playoffs as a kind of a big body target for Caden Bennett. So, I mean, I think this could give the San Jose State defense a little bit of a couple of fits as they kind of get themselves established, because every single one of those guys they have a really tight group. The wide receiver room is probably the closest room in the locker room. So they're all trying to, compete against each other and make that one big play. And they're also going to support each other when things aren't going great. So, this is a group of guys where I think every single one of them is a threat to make a play at any time.
Yeah, and I was telling a bunch of our San Jose State folks, like, hey, this is week 1 and this is the first game of the Ken Niumatalolo coaching era, but this is not what we had 4 years ago with Southern Utah, or the game 2 years ago versus Portland State. Like, this is a real FCS team that, like you said, that's more than capable of going and doing some things on the road and upsetting some FBS teams. The track record speaks for itself. And I'm a little worried for the San Jose State defense, and there's a whole lot of unknowns with this team this year because there are so many new faces that are going to be inserted, a lot of guys that didn't play last year that are going to have to step up and all of a sudden be in this starting role. And, you talk about your defense, but like our defense right now is, on the defensive line, we only have one returner. Our coach left Brent Brennan last year, and he took a lot of his guys from San Jose State to Arizona. So there's going to be some guys that have to step in. And our offensive line, we only have one returner on the offensive line. That could be somewhat of an issue. Maybe not this game, but going on towards the longevity of the season. There is a whole lot of unknowns with this team, and I think that's what makes this game in week 1, so much fun to watch, because we get to talk about it like how we are right now and, kind of just break down position by position, where a team may have an advantage. And, I would say the matchup of this game, everyone knows that watches football how big the trenches are and, how important it is to get a run game going because it opens up your passing attack. But your left guard, Jackson Slater, I mean, this guy was first team All Big Sky last year. I know the left guard position and the offensive line, there's no stats to back up what they do, but your left guard was amazing last year, and so was our defensive lineman, Soani Toia. He was a second team All Mountain West selection. I think that could be the matchup of the game pretty much. And I think a whole lot could be decided based on who wins that battle. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, no, that's going to be super fun to watch. I think these two teams, it's kind of a mismatch. I think a little bit where Sac State maybe has the advantage. They have a lot of returners on the offensive line, actually. You mentioned Jackson Slater. I know he's on like the watch list for the Senior Bowl. I mean, this guy is really, really good. Like you said, there aren't stats to back it up, but every time I've watched him, he's just dominant. They also have a returning starter, Nathan Mejia at center. They kind of shuffle him around a little bit, but he's also really good. I think he was second team Big Sky last year. So this is a pretty loaded front. So I think it could kind of show San Jose State fans maybe what they're working with a little bit, because I think it's typical in FBS and FCS matchups that we know that the FCS team is going to be a little weaker. They're going to be a little smaller. We expect the defensive line to really give them trouble, but I don't know if this will be the case this year. It could be possible. Like I said, we haven't really seen a ton of, it's hard to judge offensive linemen from camp. They're not really blocking each other, but this is a Sac State line with a lot of experience. So we could see their running game. They have a returning running back, Elijah Tolliver, who's really good, big, hard to tackle. That's a matchup I think that San Jose State fans could maybe have some nightmares about going into it.
Yeah, and of course, San Jose State started out 1-5 last year, and their run defense was their Achilles heel. It did improve towards the back end of the 2023 season when they got red hot and ultimately were the co-regular season champions of the Mountain West. But there is a whole lot of question marks with this team and a whole lot of new faces that will be leading the way. Let's talk about Sacramento State kind of from a wide perspective here. And because last year you guys were 8-4, fifth in the Big Sky. You ended up losing in the second round of the FCS playoffs to a very good South Dakota Coyote team. Obviously, the defense wasn't as good as years past. 8-4. I think with this program, you got to think there is a little bit more higher expectations under Andy Thompson going into year two and maybe top three in the Big Sky. And the Big Sky is really good this year because we just saw Montana State this past weekend and they looked really good. So what is going on here as far as Sacramento State? Where do you have them as far as the Big Sky landscape is concerned as far as the standings?
Yeah, I think they came in on the Big Sky polls fifth in the coaches and media poll. I think I would put them fourth, just ahead of UC Davis. The two Montana teams are just spectacular. Those are two historic FCS programs. Not only do they have the winning culture already established, a tough environment, and all that, but they just have some really, really talented players. So those are definitely the two who sit atop the Big Sky. Then I would put maybe Idaho ahead of them. They have a really, really good coach, young coach, Jason Eck, but they had some roster turnover. So I think we could see, I don't know a ton about Idaho after the offseason. So we'll see what they look like. But Sac State is just slots right in there as maybe the third or fourth best program in the Big Sky. And I think on the right day, they can compete. The theme of last year was kind of like we saw them beat Stanford and the expectations were sky high, right? We were like, oh, if you can go into Palo Alto and beat Stanford, even with the emotions running high, all that, then you should be able to beat a lot of FCS programs. And when Montana State and when they went to Montana, that didn't happen. Even when they went to the Causeway Classic, which is our rivalry with UC Davis, it didn't happen. They didn't look like that same team. So I think Andy Thompson learned a lot from his first year as head coach and what it takes to lead a program. He definitely faced a lot of adversity, man. I'll tell you what, they were really banged up on the defensive side. And then those big losses that they took were not pretty, So I think we could see a stronger Sac State team, but I don't think the talent level is as high as it was last year. I think the talent level on last year's team was better.
Expectations were most definitely high after you guys beat Stanford in the what many people call the revenge game for all those Sac State players when Troy Taylor departed to Palo Alto. One of the many great games that I remember seeing on national TV with the Sac State football was the crazy shootout versus Incarnate Word.
Yeah,
You were covering the team. Were you covering the team at the time during that game? And I
I
can imagine
was.
that you were live at Hornet Stadium for that one. I just got to get your thoughts on that crazy shootout for a game that no one could play defense. The offenses were flying on all cylinders. I remember the terrific wide receiver that you guys had at the time, Pierre Williams, just had an insane game. Just I want to get your thoughts on that insane playoff game with the Hornets and Incarnate Word.
Yeah, that was one of I was in the press box for that game. That was one of the craziest live sports experience I've ever had. Not just from the scoring, but just from what was going on in the game. Not many people remember, but Sac State recovered two onside kicks in the fourth quarter to even have a chance to win that game. Right? We're just talking about the most improbable stuff. It was really, really crazy. Lindsey Scott Jr. was the Incarnate Word quarterback at the time. And I'm sure that Andy Thompson still has nightmares about him. Yeah, I think he had like 700 yards, like 500 through the air, 200 on the ground, like five touchdowns. It was like maybe I don't understand how he's not on an NFL roster right now. I'll tell you that based on that game, because he did whatever he wanted with that defense. It was kind of the obviously a solemn vibe in Sacramento after that. That was the first time the program had ever gone undefeated in the regular season. It was the first time they'd ever won they were looking for their first playoff win still. Um, so, they had just gotten their first playoff win. My bad. Sorry. They beat Richmond in just the wettest game I've ever seen. Like it was pooling on the field. So they had just gotten their first playoff win. They were undefeated. So we kind of expected, in Sacramento, we were like, okay, we know Incarnate Word is good. But we thought it wouldn't get as crazy as it did. But just from the moment it kicked off, I think Marcus Fulcher, a great guy, running back, he was their backup at the time, punched in and drank a beer like in the first quarter, like from the stands. And from there, it just went off the rails. Definitely a crazy experience trying to keep up with that game, one thing I tried to do when I was covering football was I tried to basically like live tweet almost every single play or like every other play.
Oh
And dude,
boy.
I just couldn't. I was falling behind and I was like, you guys got to stick with me here because it changed minute to minute, I think like one of those onside kicks they recovered was by surprise too. So I was just typing out like, all right, Incarnate Word's going to get the ball back. Let's see what happens. And I was like, oh, never mind. Got to reset the whole story. It took me a long time to write. But yeah, no, that was one of the craziest games I've seen live ever.
Man, I can only imagine your Twitter feed that night. It must have been pretty hectic, and yeah, I can only imagine your recap for that game, especially and for all those that are not aware of the crazy game that happened on December 9th, 2022 in Sacramento. The final score was 66-63. Incarnate Word won that game. If you haven't, go watch the highlights of that game
Yeah,
because
go find it.
that was one of the many amazing games that I've seen in college football over the past several years. Um, Before we close things out here for the SJSU Sac State game preview episode, I want to just get your thoughts on just how this game is going to go on Thursday. You know, you're probably going to be rooting for Sac State. I'm going to be rooting for San Jose State. There's probably no secret there. I know you got yourself some San Jose ties yourself, but is this game going to get high scoring? Is it going to be close? Because I personally think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be high scoring based on the unknowns of the defense and, all the guys that are going to be stepping up. And, Craig Stutzman and his offense in San Jose, it's called the spread and shred offense. So I expect this thing to be a no huddle offense from the start of the first quarter. And, it wouldn't shock me at all if this thing was 42-35, something along those lines.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. I think this is going to be a really high scoring matchup. Just looking at the Sac State side of things, having so many unknowns on defense, that can really hurt. That can really, really hurt, because you don't get to hit as much in practice anymore. So this is really going to be their first time out there as 11 on 11, going full speed and hitting each other. I definitely think things could get sloppy on the defensive end on both sides of the football. And these offenses can take advantage. I know that San Jose State's got that great wide receiver, Nick Nash, right? I think he could really, really hurt this secondary. This secondary is one that doesn't have has no starting returners. Both their corners left. And so they're going to be figuring things out. They're going to be communicating. I know, I don't know what the attendance is going to be like at SEFQ, but I know that even if it gets a little bit loud, there might be some trouble there. So I definitely think it's going to be high scoring for sure. I don't know who to give the edge to at this point. That's kind of the thing. I know more about Sac State, so I feel like they could definitely give them a run for their money. But that offense is going to have to be on. It's going to have to be a night where Caden Bennett is playing like he did at Stanford and really showing out. Because I think if they do have to go to Conklin, like I kind of said before, that means that they're not going to be in this game. So we'll see what happens, but I would definitely expect a lot of points, a lot of broken tackles, and a shootout for sure.
Most definitely. And the road doesn't get any easier for Sac State because the following week you guys go to Fresno and face the Fresno State Bulldogs. I will most definitely be rooting for Sac State in that one. Because of our deep hated rivalry that San Jose State and Fresno State got. So I'll definitely be rooting for Sac State there just to support you guys and for the rivalry element there. But man, I can't wait. I can't wait for this game. I will be broadcasting this game on the student radio this Thursday on 90.5 KSJS. So if anybody from the South Bay or up in Sacramento want to tune into that, by all means, check it out. Me and my good friend Jonathan Conness will be broadcasting that game live from SEFQ Stadium in the Spartan press box. But Jack, once again, thanks for joining us. Where can people find you online? All your stuff that you'll be doing with the State Hornet this year.
Yeah, so I'm now the editor-in-chief of the State Hornet, so I'm going to plug them. You can follow us on X and or Twitter. I don't know, do you call it X? I call it Twitter.
I just say both.
At the State Hornet. You can find us on Instagram as State Hornet. You can find me talking about the Seahawks most likely at on Twitter as at Jack Freeman _13. Thank you so much, Nick, for having me on. It was always good to talk about talk ball, especially the small schools.
Yeah, most definitely. And we look forward with all of our San Jose State folks connecting with your people from Sacramento State if you guys do indeed come down to the South Bay. So most definitely looking forward to the matchup between the San Jose State Spartans and the Sacramento State Hornets. Once again, Jack Freeman joining me for this episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.